I have been on a high all week just thinking about everything shown at CitizenCon 2023. I'm enjoying the larger gaming community taking notice of Squadron 42 and going, oh, what is this? It looks pretty darn cool.
This is incredible. Like, I had no idea that it was on this level, and I am so glad that I saw this. This is unbelievable, man.
It's been an incredible boost of confidence that CIG will succeed, and man, am I hyped to see everything new. Well, almost everything. I do think it's important to be able to enjoy this massive presentation while also giving critical feedback for the things that might not look so good. And there were a few things in this presentation that felt a little off to me. Allow me to elaborate on those and also to reiterate that the point of this video is for community discussion and constructive feedback with the goal of making Star Citizen as good a game as possible. Alright, with that said, one of the more whelming elements of the presentation for me was some of the flying combat updates. Not all, a lot of it was really cool, but the new G-force movements in the cockpit were not really my thing. I'm already noticing these in the persistent universe a bit and I can't stand it. It's somewhat nauseating and fairly exaggerated or even unrealistic, considering how much you would strap yourself in if you were preparing for G-forces in all directions. It makes aiming more difficult and flying a bit more jarring. I look at it sort of like an exaggerated screen shake, which I tend to turn off in any sort of FPS game. And while I believe the option may be there to turn it off, I also think that CIG needs to find more ways to communicate off-axis ship movement, like showing which thrusters are firing on your ship status MFD and stronger visual vector markers, especially when your vector is like the hard left or hard right. More audio cues for speed and direction can help communicate what vector you're on as well. I think Elite Dangerous has done a decent job with the engine audio that tells you how fast you're going without having to look at the UI. And CIG can certainly improve in this area and hopefully negate the need to exaggerate camera movements. Now, some of the space combat in the Hold the Line trailer and other showcases looked quite clunky with jerky movements and difficulty staying on target. It's hard to know if this is because the actual mechanics are poorly designed or if it's a skill issue for the person recording that gameplay, but it does make me a little concerned that maybe some of the zoom in stuff is going to be pretty funky. Now, seeing the updated MFDs and UI in the Gladius was awesome, but seeing the power triangle stick around on those updated MFDs was a little disappointing. It sort of seems like having master modes and the power triangle leads to some redundant mechanics, and frankly, the power triangle currently functions more like busy work for pilots. Constantly swapping between shields and weapons while in a turning fight, or if you're in a transport ship, you're pretty much on engines the whole time. It's possible that they are changing how this power triangle works, but since it wasn't really discussed, I assume it's pretty much the same as before. Now, while they did mention more ship weapon types were coming into the game, like burst fire weapons, everything shown in the combat sequences still looked pretty basic. I was hoping to see some more variety and especially more info on things like missile combat and anti-missile combat, like being able to shoot them down. It seems like an important aspect of the gameplay to get dialed in, especially before launching Squadron 42. Now, the new quantum jump process of having to keep your ship properly aligned during quantum acceleration is awesome, and I'm very excited about this design choice. However, this makes up a very short period of the overall travel time in most cases, and they didn't mention anything about the rest of the transit process, since making cross-system jumps can be like 4 minutes or longer depending on distance traveling or what ship you're using. I think it's really important to have some sort of optional, an emphasis on the optional there, piloting gameplay during long quantum jumps, like allowing you to manually steer your ship into, say, a high-speed energy spline of quantum travel. But if you need to go hands-off for a bathroom break or just do some internal maintenance on your ship, you still have the option to just let the ship go and cruise to destination. I think for hauling gameplay to succeed, you're going to have similar appeals to, say, Euro Trucker, where there needs to be more hands-on gameplay during the entire hauling process. Now, we did get to see a somewhat updated holo map or radar in the Gladius, and it still seems clustered and difficult to read at times and doesn't show large objects in close proximity. The stations that you fly around or asteroids don't seem to render on these holo radars, which could help avoid collisions in complex environments. It's a bit of a missed opportunity in my opinion, since things like trying to navigate an asteroid field in the middle of a dogfight are extremely challenging in game right now, as you just don't have many tools to tell you if you're about to hit an asteroid. Also, there was still no showcase of any sort of landing cam on the updated MFDs or holo map. Salty Mike and I were expecting to see it during the atmospheric flight demo, again using the holo screen to potentially show your ship and rendering out the ground around it to aid with landing. Maybe it's still planned, but it certainly wasn't addressed, and not having a proper landing solution other than using cinematic cameras does feel extremely weird. Now, another really important mechanic of spaceship combat is going to be blade technology, and we didn't see any of that at the presentation, which is a little bit concerning since it could basically change everything about spaceship combat meta. With CIG changing so much about spaceship combats with master modes and component maintenance, you would think that they would want to just test everything all at once so they don't have to keep rebalancing after every new feature. Blade tech, if you don't know what it is basically the AI tech that will control ship turrets for you when you don't have a dedicated gunner. Even if this tech is being saved for, say, server meshing, it would be nice to see a showcase now and get its testing underway along with master modes and, say, Arena Commander. Imagine being able to solo pilot a Scorpius with an AI turret or a Hammerhead full of AI turrets. How's that going to change the ship meta? A lot is my guess. So it would be nice to see this feature more developed and being tested sooner rather than later. Now, when detailing cargo and shipping gameplay, I was extremely excited to see the various types of cargo missions they're planning. It looks really thought out and pretty much most of what I would want to see. However, they didn't mention anything about cargo weight affecting your flight performance. This is a big one for me. I think a fully loaded Hull C should cause you to burn way more fuel and accelerate and decelerate slower. This could be used in some really fun ways, like needing ships with strong thrust to be able to deliver heavier payloads into atmosphere, or having to really carefully manage fuel with large hauls and use decoupled to save on fuel. I hope that cargo weight isn't too difficult for CIG to factor into flight models, because I think it would really improve shipping overall. Now, when it comes to the FPS presentation stuff, overall I think things are going in a fantastic direction and the updates feel very strong. That said, most good FPS games are extremely dialed in, and even the small stuff that feels off can ruin the whole experience. The new projected crosshair system looks a little weird as its position moves depending on the distance to your target. It does seem like CIG is trying to sort of reinvent the wheel here, but it might not be good. I'd of course need to test it, but my gut reaction when seeing the crosshairs jump around was yikes. Now, when it comes to having sliding in first-person shooters, I don't mind it. I think it's a fun mechanic, but the chain sliding that was shown off here seems to be a bit aggressive, and CIG should probably want to avoid sliding being overused, as it can just lead to really cheesy gameplay mechanics. Now, the FPS combat overall still shows a lack of variety in tactical or fun fighting options. The new Volt gun was shown, which does look cool and different from what we currently have, but otherwise the FPS gameplay is basically take cover, shoot your standard type of gun, throw a standard type of grenade, and maybe slide around a little bit. There was no grenade variety, smoke, EMP, flash, stun, scatter, incendiary, scanning, or noise. It's still just the basic grenade. There's no weird sci-fi guns like sonic weapons, smart guns, darts, heavy ordnance, other than what we already know is in the game, jump jets, or anything else. I'm not saying we need all of that stuff in Star Citizen, but some of it would certainly add some flavor. Now, clearly a lot of the gameplay is being held back, as I'm sure a lot of the FPS combat later in the game will be against the Vandal warriors, but it would be nice to see more enemy variety in the human targets. Jump jet bad guys, stealth tech or cloaking ones, guys with heavy ordnance or armored shields. Again, there may be more stuff coming and it's just not being shown, but so far I would call the combat that has been shown a bit uninspired. Now, scanning. Despite the devs saying powerful scans would make you visible to enemies, it didn't really look like that was the case. The NPCs didn't really seem to react to you scanning them and having basically wall hacks on them at all times. I'm worried that this ability might be too good and make the gameplay less interesting. Perhaps a longer cooldown or having limited scans so you can't always spam it in combat. I'm also not a huge fan of the bodies showing inside of the armor. It just looks a bit messy. Since this could be one of the most useful combat abilities in Squadron and multiplayer, I think it really needs to be dialed in and preferably more limited. Now, those were the main things that stood out to me as either needing some more work or thought behind them, or just more explanation of what CIG's plans are in the future. I'd be curious to hear what you think about my feedback, and if you have any of your own, let me know in the comments. Again, CitizenCon was an exciting presentation with tons of quality of life improvements shown and awesome new features. If you enjoyed this video, leave me a like and hit that sub button. And up next, check out my video on Squadron 42 for noobs. As always, thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you next time. This is Level Cap, signing off.